In a world of noise, finding the signal is everything. My commitment is not just to tell you what's happening, but to provide the context you need to understand it, to separate fact from fiction, and to deliver the truth with clarity and courage. I'm your news anchor who appears quite often most of the days in a week. Join me tonight and every night for the reporting you can trust. Please do like and subscribe, also follow for everyday news to keep up to date what's happening in our world. Thank you. Top story. Middle East crisis deepens as fragile truce hangs in the balance. Gaza Strip, Jerusalem. A tense and temporary ceasefire entered its fourth day in Gaza, with a third exchange of hostages and prisoners conducted between Hamas and Israel. While the lull in fighting has allowed a significant surge of humanitarian aid into the besieged enclave, mediators from Qatar, Egypt and the US are working against the clock to extend the truce beyond its initial four-day framework. Israeli officials have publicly stated their intention to resume large-scale military operations with full force once the ceasefire expires to dismantle Hamas's governing and military capabilities. Meanwhile, Hamas is pushing for a more durable ceasefire and the release of a greater number of Palestinian security prisoners. The situation remains incredibly volatile, with the threat of renewed conflict looming over every negotiation. Europe grapples with fallout from far-right gains. Brussels, Belgium. European Union institutions are facing a period of political recalibration following recent parliamentary elections that saw significant gains for nationalist and far-right parties in several member states. Key policy agendas, including the European Green Deal and future support for Ukraine, are now under intense scrutiny as a more fragmented parliament seeks to form new coalitions. In France, President Macron's government is navigating a cohabitation with a prime minister from the rival National Rally, leading to domestic policy deadlock and uncertainty over France's traditional leadership role in the EU. Analysts warn that the political shift could slow down EU decision-making and embolden pro-Russia voices within the bloc. Global economy, markets jittery as US dollar strengthens, crushing emerging currencies. London, UK, Hong Kong. Financial markets are experiencing significant turbulence as the US dollar index hit a new multi-month high. The dollar's strength, driven by expectations that the US Federal Reserve will maintain higher interest rates for longer to combat persistent inflation, is putting immense pressure on emerging market currencies and exacerbating debt repayment crises in developing nations. Concurrently, oil prices have dipped slightly due to the Gaza ceasefire talks, but remain highly sensitive to geopolitical risks in the Middle East. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, is set to release a report later this week, warning of a tepid 20s, a decade of sluggish global growth hampered by high debt, geopolitical fragmentation, and weak productivity. Asia-Pacific. Tensions simmer in South China Sea and on Korean Peninsula. South China Sea. The Philippine government issued a formal diplomatic protest against China after a near collision between a Chinese Coast Guard vessel and a Philippine resupply boat near the contested second Thomas Shoal. The incident, captured on video, is the latest in a series of escalating confrontations in the strategically vital waterway. The United States reiterated its commitment to its mutual defense treaty with the Philippines, calling China's actions provocative and unsafe. Seoul, South Korea. North Korea announced it has successfully tested a new solid-fuel hypersonic missile, marking a significant advancement in its weapons program. The launch, which South Korea and Japan condemned as a grave provocation, demonstrates Pyongyang's continued efforts to develop more agile and harder-to-intercept ballistic missiles. The UN Security Council is scheduled to hold an emergency session, though past meetings have failed to result in new action due to opposition from China and Russia. Climate and environment. Record-breaking hurricane season continues to batter Central America. Mexico City, Mexico. Central America and southern Mexico are beginning a massive cleanup operation after being battered by Hurricane Tammy, the latest in a record-breaking Atlantic hurricane season. The storm caused widespread flooding, landslides, and significant damage to infrastructure in already vulnerable communities. At the COP29 Climate Summit in Baku, Azerbaijan, negotiations over a new global climate finance goal are stalling, with developed and developing nations at an impasse over who should pay for the escalating costs of climate-related loss and damage. Africa. Political unrest and health crises dominate headlines. Khartoum, Sudan. The brutal civil war between the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, continues with no end in sight. Recent fighting has centered on El Fasher, the last major city in the Darfur region not under RSF control, raising fears of a new wave of ethnic violence. The United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, has issued a stark warning that Sudan is facing the world's largest hunger crisis, with millions on the brink of famine. Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo. A new and deadly outbreak of the Ebola virus has been declared in the country's northern province, prompting a rapid response from the World Health Organization, WHO, and Médecins Sans Frontières. The outbreak, occurring in a remote and conflict-affected area, poses significant logistical challenges for health workers. Americas. Polarizing election aftermath and migration challenges. Washington, D.C., USA. The political landscape remains deeply divided as the nation absorbs the results of the recent presidential election. With the outcome officially certified, the transition of power is underway, marked by both bipartisan calls for unity and persistent legal challenges and protests from the losing side. Markets are closely watching for signals on future fiscal and regulatory policy from the president-elect's transition team. Mexico-US border. A record surge of migrants at the southern US border is overwhelming authorities and reigniting the political debate over immigration policy. The Biden administration is reportedly considering a new executive order that would restrict asylum claims, mirroring policies from the previous administration, a move that is already drawing criticism from progressive allies and human rights groups. Science and technology. The AI arms race intensifies. San Francisco, USA. The global race for artificial intelligence supremacy entered a new phase as a leading US tech giant unveiled its next-generation large language model, Project Gemini, claiming it surpasses human expert performance on a wide range of professional and academic benchmarks. The announcement has triggered both excitement about its potential applications in medicine and science and renewed calls from international bodies for a global regulatory framework to manage the risks of advanced AI, including mass disinformation and job displacement. In summary, the world today is a landscape of fragile truces and escalating tensions. From the battlefields of Gaza and Sudan to the diplomatic halls of Brussels and the UN, economic uncertainty, driven by a strong dollar and high inflation, is being compounded by the relentless impacts of climate change and the breakneck pace of technological innovation. As old geopolitical orders shift and new challenges emerge, the international community finds itself at a critical juncture, grappling with the fundamental question of whether cooperation or conflict will define the coming era.